Hey guys, Boris here, bringing you another VOD review. The world scrims are in full swing and there is no better time than now to jump in game with Mr. Wasian Iverson, who many project to be making the final lobby due to his regular season performance, winning 3 of the Pro Circuit championships. We are playing in the Silver Scrapes encounter, which everyone forgets about until the very end when it kicks in. And we have managed to already pick up a Yasuo on the path of Transcendence, and especially with the Shen shop, we could be potentially considering playing around it. Jhin, even though the Yunara recently got buff, still isn't preferred as the opener. However, he can hold some Yone items. You can play around Yone in the middle game and then maybe prefer, and you're going to opt to hold on to that. Do pass upon that Sona. Many players are playing the Demacia line now that the Vayne has recently gotten his buffs, and you can play around the long shots. If you are stuck on level 8, try to go for a Vayne 3 or simply capitalize on the tempo you get on stage 4 to go for a level 9. Now, looking at our spot, we have managed to 2-star this Jhin. We have quite a decent Ione opener, and frontline is a little bit lacking, but if we do manage to pick up the Alawi too early on, it could definitely be strong into that. Unfortunately, the Demacia opener is not as clear-cut, and our items more look to be leaning in towards the AP with the JG potentially, and then having the half of the Nashers. Therefore, it's more looking even like an Ari reroll spot. We do get offered a Warpath, which we simply would not be able to really capitalize on. It's a very strong lobby, and if you're taking this, you're just essentially saying that you are so much better than the rest of the lobby, and you would want a strong opener, and definitely a frontliner helps in that. High voltage would lock us into this AP line, and we would probably be wanting a upgraded frontliner to do that, and potentially another slam that would clearly establish our direction on a unit that can use it, as to capitalize on this item tempo. Hustler, due to the nerfs it has received, is generally now would be played in something like a 1-cost reroll, but we do not have it in the meta right now, so going to reroll that. Warlord's Honor has seen more play. However, we will be 100% locking ourselves into a Ionia line, and there is no guarantee at the moment that someone else might not be considering it. Prep is just the too delayed in these reroll lines, especially if you're playing from a lose streak kind of spot. And War to Wait here could provide us with some direction, and it's only econ augment that we've seen at the moment, as you can always just be selling the extra copies you get for a little bit of drip econ, and potentially could give us a clear direction into what we might be considering playing. Therefore, probably leaning to that, as I'm not too sold on the Warlord's Honor myself, and we do get a worth a wait Sona. Now, thankfully, we had some of these Demacia units, so we could slap in Demacia 3 Demacia right now, and could potentially also just go for a Poppy unlock. Also worth the wait is generally considered to be a tempo augment in itself. If we do get a usable 1-cost, like at the moment we have the Sona, could be playing sacking the early game here and going for that stage 3 spike with the Sona 3, and hopefully we manage to pick up some upgraded frontliners along the way. Opts to still be holding onto this Ionia opener, as we do definitely have it's a good path, we have the items. However, it looks like we are going to be passing up on that instead. Now, it was a potential that we could consider, and I assume we're not unlocking the Poppy here in order to be playing for that lost streak. Do not really need to be holding on to an extra unit at the moment, especially as we're trying to chase these econ thresholds as fast as we can, coming up from a lost streak. And a single Poppy 1-star would not be holding our frontline down, as we see the lobby is generally a little bit more high on the higher tempo already. Now, since that, we're able to make a 20 here, well read by Wasian Iverson to not go for that slam immediately, and just simply play into a lost streak. Simply scouting around, and Demacia being very popular, it is that our worry is potentially that we might be contested again. The Demacia longshot comp has been very prominent in all across these pro scrims. However, unfortunately, I was unable to really find a good game where we have an interesting open setup for it. Some players try to hard force it, bullying the others of the line, and while they still managed to squeeze out some top 5s and top 4s from some spots, they did not appear to be that of an interesting spot. Going to complete our Nashers here. On a 2-cost should be generally good. Obviously, we would prefer if that was a 3-cost ourselves. And Still, since we did not make that high of an econ, and we are generally going to this, the Demacia line has clear-cut units that you are looking to be playing for. Are not going for a Bard role either. Simply wanting to be stacking our econ and then using that as a tempted way to tempo from that Sona 3 onto the level 9. Recognize here now that we can slam and still lose the fight, therefore trying to preserve as much as HP as we can. Unfortunately unable to kill the 2 Shens over here. Now we're able to unlock the Poppy as we, again, perhaps he himself has already most likely calculated that from there from 30, even on a lost streak, we're not going to be making 40, therefore it's completely fine to be also unlocking the Poppy, as well as obviously preserving the HP. Going to be slotting in the weakest board, trying to watch out for our Sacker. Unfortunately, do not queue into them, but again, this 5 streak is very valuable for us here to be making that extra econ, therefore it's worth it to sacrifice this HP here, even on the risk of queuing into a strong player like this, just to get that extra econ and that lost streak into the PvE round. Now Ari has appeared for us in our shop, but unfortunately we're fully committed to this line at this point, obviously with the word for wait. Now we're probably trying to see if we can potentially build some kind of front line. Obviously, would do get a double tier, but we do want to be some frontline to be supporting this unit. Always have to remember to itemize our frontline together as long with our backline. Going to unlock an Oriana as our second invoker, as well as having this Vi slotted in. Some redundancy into this overlapping of armor and magic resist from the Demacia tray, but simply is going to be our strongest board. Ideally, if you can, in an ideal spot, you would want to be playing Poppy together with a Juggernaut as to not stack too much of the same stat as, and Poppy is generally extremely strong tank coming up on the stage 3 if you're able to high roll a 2-star of her. On our Augment decision here, Retribution would be more a melee comp. We already have JG slammed, not going to be something that's very appealing. Indecision would help us with our econ situation, but would pretty much guarantee us into a further loss streak, and at the moment we're looking to spike, therefore the Soul Awakening is the better of the options, I would assume. Rascal Gloves could have slams up frontline items. Now the cap of this comp is quite high if you're playing into something else, therefore could be considering that. Wand Overfill gives us an extra item that we can immediately slam, plus provide us with more item tempo, and if we are playing into this AP Demacia setup, we will definitely have another AP unit that we can be looking to itemize. And Giant and Mighty, while the health combines, it's a combat augment. When you are having on stage 3, you have less units, we're going to be having a little bit less of a value. Same goes for the Soul Awakening there before. We did not have the front line to really fully support it. Therefore, one overfill item augment is generally the best to look for our spot and for tempo. Now, unfortunately, do not get the Blast Shield, which would be the greatest, or the Continuum Cogs at this spot. Probably will have to go with the Electrical overall, the simple damage as Thermal Slaters. At the moment, Poppy shields itself, yes, and Jarvan has a little bit of a shield. But it's not simply that great of a value at the moment. Going to be tossing that Protector's Vow on the Jarvan here in order for him to get the cast off a little bit earlier. Simply trying to play around with how much we have the damage, and all the other units are 1-star. We do high roll a Lux here, but I'm not sure if we can realistically be able to slot it in here. Could give up potentially on this Piltover however, if we wanted to in favor. Yeah, we're going to slot in the Nautilus, and Nautilus is going to be their strongest tank at this moment. Playing aggressively with our movers, recognizing this is our spike that we need to be going for. But we unfortunately do drop around here to the strong 3-itemized LeBlanc, but that has the front line to support it in the form of the extra Arakan. Do go for a Cloak as to sort out our Spark. Zinza 2 perhaps would have been the most immediate upgrade, however we would have to be having too many floating components at the moment, since we opted to slam that Archangels for that Sona. We high roll another Lux, alright. That is quite good for our spot, but still do not seem to be able to use it. Now the question is, the second Lux here, is it even good? In the sense that we have to be holding on to this extra 4 gold And we've lost our win streak, so generally you want to be having a 33 gold in order to be making that extra 3 econ threshold here at the 40. Going to be able to pick up a win against the Yordle player, who is quite low, but they have the coronation, so they have probably pushed for 8 Yordle unlock in order to play around that and rebound their econ in that form of way. Yes, we can see that they have the 8 Yordles on. Coronation fully enabling them that, and we can see there's already RE players playing around. Definitely on the path of tennis, there's going to be someone taking that line, and we have the Ishtal RE variation, which is quite also a neat way, but with the Ishtal, I'm definitely enabling that for them. Able to make the 40 here, which is still quite good. Able to pick up a Xin Zhao to have it should be a stronger tank at the moment, but perhaps we are a little bit worried about remover economy in the long run. Obviously didn't need to remove her at the moment. We'll see if we opt to do so, as we do want to be preserving our lives at the moment. On our components, they do not exactly work out. Like, we would probably be looking for a Morello if we ideally could, but we're going to settle for this Sunfire. The thing with the Demacia line is that you do want this Garen to be having that true tank items, and at the moment we have a Spark and a Sunfire, obviously very needed items in a sense that you do want that anti-heal check, you do want that shred check, but we want to be ideally be finding a way. Also, the Gunblade was a potential out. That's probably how we would be looking to kill our next rod, as it's just simply stalling for this Demacia line is very strong as well. Item grab bag could potentially screw us over. We have an item augment, and since we're not playing in the longshot variation where we would be using potential to use both AP and AD items, if we do get an AD item drop, it can be quite bad. Also, we can get redundancy and shred and anti-heal at this spot. Band of Thieves is a potential that we can consider if we are, especially if we do get something like a Shyvana to toss on our board. It's certainly a good holder, otherwise Galio can use it quite well. And other 1, 2, 5 could potentially give us a little bit of an extra econ inflation, as we are not that high on econ, and maybe help us sort our component. Twin Guardians would be interesting of a pick. Since this Demacia comp, if you're staying in a standard way, you do want to be positioning your Garen in a way that in the same side of Lux, so that the units can wrap around the Garen and Lux can get the maximum value out of her ult. But it seems that he's leaning into it. Fire Axiom obviously wasn't the thing that we're looking for, same with Corrosion. Corrosion would stack with the Shred, but it's not that strong, and Fire Axiom we have the anti-heal sorted out. Then we're going to go with the Twin Guardians, which just again creates some form of redundancy for us. Going to go for a roll down, able to pick up a pair of Broms. This is the thing to be watching out whenever playing your Demacia games, in order to be looking for a potential to be flexing around something like a Brom that you can toss in. Also, it's holding onto the Sejuani pair, so potentially signaling that we could be playing into some form of also a Freljord board, especially since the Garen is so contested with all these Fast 9 players going to be holding onto your Garens. Even if you are going to be backing into this Demacia line, if you're able to just 2-star a Brom on your roll down, especially when you're a little gold, you have to be quite flexible with what you're playing around. And we do hit that 2-star Brom. It's generally in quite few, sometimes some lobbies, it's very uncontested, and we're going to be starting our, seems to transition a little bit more into this. Now, could have perhaps tossed in a Sejuani, but we do not have that Lissandra at the moment to be unlocking the Freljord for ourselves, and we see that there's also another Demacia player around it, AP Demacia, therefore we have to be very flexible again with that roll down, as I mentioned. Also, just going to be synergizing better if we're able to go into this Freljord line again. Demacia just giving that armor and magic resist in its form, and well, you do not want to be again stacking too much of the same stat in a TFT game. Have this Sejuani too, so now we're going to be slotting in this Anivia simply to provide that extra tankiness for our Brom. Going to see how we're going to position the Lux in a way. So since she's not 2-star and Sona is our primary carry, going to simply tuck in the Sona in our corner to be the most protected, and they're not too much worried about this Lux having the best of the angles in the game. And hopefully, yeah, this now that within the frontline upgrade, this Sona is able to put in some work. We do not have the most standard of builds. Obviously, Archangel are good for these Stalcoms that have all these magic resists and everything. Going to dig aggressively here as we are sitting on two crucial pairs, and able to thankfully hit them. Going to be transitioning the items to the Lux 2 instead, as obviously she's going to be stronger, simply considering 12 gold is stronger than 9 gold, and she's harder accessible than a 1-star 3 cost. Sorry, 3-star 1 cost. And slamming that Sterex in order to preserve our tempo is generally a decent tank item, and obviously a Gunblade is something that is again very strong in this Demacia comp, provided extra stall. But we, at the moment, simply having two bulkier frontliners is going to be more efficient for ourselves. Unfortunately, I do get another rod drop, and at this spot, how we could potentially plan this out. Now, to get a reforge off on our sword that we got dropped. This could be another Nashers and the Declaw, I would assume. Yeah, going to go with another Nashers DG, just simply since we have the Rod Augment, a little bit of an extra attack speed is going to help the Sona to be working as a mana generation. And the Declaw is generally good in a lobby that's playing quite a bit of AP in itself and simply completes our components quite nicely. Now we are on a couple of removers, and I'm not exactly sure what his endgame plan is, therefore he might not want to be slamming this open rod on this Sona. And again, speaking of how we want some form of a true tank items on this Garen and Sterex is simply tankier than something like a Spark. Nicely positioned around this Ahri Ionia player who is quite low on lives, has not managed to hit, so thankfully for us they're not going to be making to that cap themselves. And most likely just going to be looking to cruise out the rest of the stage onto this board. Have picked up a win streak, are not necessarily under pressure at the moment to be rolling more, and the only thing that we could be fishing for is a contested Lissandra and an upgrade. Therefore, just going to look to make our way to level 9 and potentially cap around some of the form of the 5 costs. Could we also, if we tossed in a Targon unit, we could also be potentially considering unlocking a Rise in this comp as a way. Have managed to secure a top 4 from, again, very well recognized when we needed to spike, and the best augment to be picking in its spot that's where we need to spike, that being obviously usually in the stage 3 is going to be your item augments. Picking up another Archangels here, simply wanting to complete a third item, then a secondary carry. Always going to be taking prio if you can over a secondary tank. I would assume that it's a little bit too late for the Ornn at the moment. Could we even level for it? We are on 46 gold, and yeah, we do not even have the gold to be leveling for it. Going to just hold out at this extra RA to delay the player also playing for it. And we queue into a player who's simply running away with the lobby, with playing from those econ augments into the fast 9 board. Now, yeah, with the reward to wait, and especially with the Sona here, our cap is going to be a little bit lower. Therefore, simply are not going to really be able to contest that on the current board, since we do not even have a single 5 cost in of our own. Again, something like seems like to be a Melflex, but holding onto the Seraphine. The buffs on her have enabled her as a potential duo Cory until you make it to the Mel 2, but since they are stuck on level 8, we're able to pick up a win here since we simply have our full upgrades. Able to finally find that Lissandra of our own. And now we should be able to levels, yeah, simply just going to be slotting it in the ward as an extra form of a warden, since we do not really have that much else. Obviously something like a Shyvana could potentially be a little bit stronger, but we have no guarantee of obviously finding that, as we're not that rich at the moment. For our roll down, find that Ornn too, so going to be slotting in that. Find a Shyvana. Now, yeah, going to drop out of the Shyvana. Simply the strongest of the units out for the night. And probably looking to complete a third tank item, but it would be redundancy and magic resist. And this guy is AD that we are having the troubles against. Therefore, simply going to go for another damage item. But we have secured a top 2, and since we lost the ghost, it's mostly going to be losing. At the moment, this player just has this higher of the caps of their own. We're going to push our levels simply to add another 5 cost. Fine, that's Swain too, but it's not going to be that much. Even if we 2-star these 5 costs, I don't think we can outcap this player. Who seems to be they were playing in that Demacia longshot variation of their own, but since they found that Sona 2, they didn't go for a Ziggs on their part. However, yeah, they are simply just higher caps, so we're going to be losing a round. But well displayed by Wasian, how even from a weaker of the starts, how important is this to utilize the tempo provided from Lord to wait to spike your board, then preserve that HP too, and secure himself a way on to level 9 by again rolling when we know that the lobby is going to be spiking. Good recognition of the lobby tempo displayed here by Wasian Iverson. The best of luck to him in the Worlds. I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope that you learned something new, and I wish to see you in the next one. Have a good one.